What's up, gamers? You know what time it is. It's time for another meta update. I'm Joshua Joshi Howard. You probably know that by this point. And today we're talking about what happened this last weekend. I played an RTT this last weekend. I played 7 tanks, and over 3 games, I think I played a total of 8 actual battle rounds. And then we just kind of talked through the rest of it because the game had already been decided. It was a good time. Anyway, here's some GT stuff. It was a pretty normal sized weekend overall. Normally, you kind of expect like mid 40s to mid 50s number of players, unlike the weekend beforehand where we had over 100 players because basically everything that was supposed to happen on Valentine's Day happened last week. But this time, we're back to a fairly normal sized weekend. There is a decent number of teams events this weekend, so we do have like some more stuff going on than we would have with just the singles. It was not like actually our best weekend. 142 wins, 131 losses, 2 draws for a 52% win rate overall. Do bear in mind that if you are looking at this and you're trying to compare it to other stuff that talk about win rates over the weekend, that I am very generous with the events that I include. If it was 5 rounds and you had at least like 10 players, I included it. So I'm going to have slightly different numbers than some other people like StatCheck or people on Reddit. Just keep that in mind. We all have slightly different criteria for what events we include, but we come out with pretty similar numbers, which means that we're pulling from a lot of the same data. Oh, an average elo that was slightly lower than normal of 1534.9 and a median of 1506.3. So pretty normal overall. The average elo going down a little bit does represent the fact that some people who were playing guard before as kind of like tourists have moved off of the faction a little bit because it's not as blindingly strong as it was before, and also a lot of the strong players were at teams events this weekend, so that also took a hit. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the first archetype that we have today, and I'm going to be calling this one the Spanish Special because it is there's basically like one list that you see almost every top player who's playing in Spain, or every top Spanish player. They're basically playing almost exactly the same list. I'm not sure who came up with it originally. It might have been like Roger Boira. It could have been a couple of other players in Spain. But you only really see this list being played in Spain and basically nowhere else. And Spain's a really interesting country in general because it plays a lot more teams. You don't actually see a lot of singles events in the country, or at least it's kind of like France, where you have way more teams than you have singles. But the fact that I've seen almost this identical list like 6 times and only in one country, I'm going to go ahead and give it its own name. So Spanish Special, let's go ahead and get into it right away. So to start off with, we have Luis Fernando Barrios Faramin, who played at the Canarian Open. This was a singles event where they went 5-0. And because the country doesn't really play that many singles events, their elo isn't real because elo does not track teams events at all. But Luis was playing a Commissar with Epium Detail, Gaunt's Ghost, a Krieg Command Squad, Lord Solar, 10 Krieg, 1 Torox, an artillery with a heavy mortar, 10 Rough Riders, 5 Rough Riders, 6 bullgryn, a unit of Kazarkin, 1 Basilisk, 2 Luminous Vanquishers, and 2 Rogel Dorn battle tanks. So this could have gone into like the Dorns and bullgryn and Vanquishers oh my category. But the other really big thing about this is they're spending 140 plus 95, so like 230, I think it's 235 points are being spent on indirect, and they're not being put into things that are going to be playing the mid board. So a lot of other metas would be playing this, so like extra Kazarkin, extra Chimeras, maybe some more horses, just stuff to be playing in the mid board and actually take up space there. But in Spain, they haven't really been doing this. I won't lie, I don't love it. I don't think that the artillery and the basilisk do a ton in the list. Like you get a little bit of you're putting like a little bit of attrition on your opponent, but the problem is like they don't really kill very much. And the really big thing here is that you're gonna kill like a couple of marines every turn with this kind of firepower. It's pretty good into like exactly Drukhari Spectacle of Spite, where you do have that like strength 8. You're going to be killing a couple of Hellions every single turn, and you will very quickly whittle your way through the bikes that just will not be able to do anything. But the Basilisk ability doesn't work. I'm pretty sure the Basilisk ability is infantry locked. So it's interesting. You still have like you have like barely enough stuff to play the mid board. So it doesn't tend to win. You're not going to be winning on primary nearly as hard with this kind of list as you would with others. However, Luis did beat Demons, Blood Angels, Ultramarines, and then Ultramarines again, and then Custodes for 5-0. I believe this was second place overall. So congratulations to Luis. and hope to see you again soon. Next, we have Roger Boira, and this list, I'm going to click back and forth. This list is very nearly identical. You can see that it kind of moves a little bit, but the only difference between the list that Luis ran and the one that Roger Boira ran is the fact that Roger had Cadians and Luis had Krieg. That's the only difference between the two lists, as far as I can tell. Roger was playing this one at the 11th GT de Valencia, which was a teams event for this one, where he went 4 wins and 1 loss. Not a whole lot new to say about this one. It was a small win into Tyranids, big wins into CSM, Dark Angels, and Guard, and a big loss into Ultramarines immediately afterwards. So, again, this is like the 5th time that I've shown off this kind of list coming from exactly Spain. It hasn't really caught on anywhere else. I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't recommend copying this list if you were trying to play elsewhere. I think there has to be something very specific about the Spanish meta that they're targeting with the artillery and the basilisk, and I'm not sure that's going to translate to other countries as well. But if you do end up playing it, let me know what you think about it, and maybe I'll give it a try at some point. Okay, next we have what I generally consider is the strongest singles like guard list that you can play, especially on Games Workshop, but it plays really well on WTC, it plays really well on UKTC. If you are just trying to have a list that will have a winning matchup, like a slightly winning matchup into everything in the game, Doombolt Guard is what you're going to be wanting to play. It will not win some games as hard as variants that have like bullgryn in it. It's not going to win some variants as hard as lists that have vanquishers in it, but there is basically nothing in the game that Doombolt Guard doesn't have an even or better matchup into. So you're going to be having a really good time overall with this. You generally flood the board with a lot of relatively cheap, relatively elite infantry for the guard, and ask your opponent, can you deal with 2 or 3 waves of just tons of bodies with 4-up saves? A lot of it's going to be reviving dudes, a lot of it's going to be doing extra mortal wounds, and the answer is very few armies can actually do that. It just works really, really well. So the first one, we have that 6++ GT being played by Alex Fowler. And before I get into this actual list, the event was very interesting because there were a lot of very strong players. There were a lot of members of Team England who are participating in this event, but a lot of them are also playing stuff that they don't normally play. Like Alex Fowler, I normally think of I think I first saw his name as a Thousand Suns player, but I know he's also played a lot of other very mobile kinds of Marines in the past. And I know that some players had their lists voted for by the community. Like I know Nassim Fouchain was playing Biosanctic GSC, which I believe was somehow voted on. I believe there's something involving charity, but there's a lot of very strong players playing stuff that you don't normally see them play. And Alex Fowler was playing a list that I believe we saw another 6++ member, I think it was Rob, who was playing, I think, this exact list a couple of weeks ago, or however long ago, at a Teams event. It's like 1 Caden Castellan, 1 Caden Command Squad, 3 Silent Command Squads, Nork Deadog, and Ogren Bodyguard, 1 Rogal Dorn Commander, 3 Chimeras, 1 unit 20 Cadians, 1 of Catachan, 3 units of 10 Death Corps of Krieg, 3 units of Kazarkim, 1 unit of 10 Scions, 2 units of 5 Scions. This isn't quite Doombolt, because it does have the 3 units of Krieg instead of the 3 Krieg Engineers. But a couple big things about this one, it does have only 1 Rogal Dorn Commander, and you basically, like, you almost exactly substitute this, or the second Rogal Dorn Commander, for 10 Scions, a Scion Command Squad, and Nork Deadog. They're pretty close in points overall, and this unit actually starts on the board. I've played 2 games with this. I think it is okay on Games Workshop terrain, or at least the Nork Deadog break. I've talked to a couple other people who have played it on Games Workshop terrain, and they said it's fine. That unit takes volley guns, and the biggest thing that it does is it helps out the Awakened Dynasty matchup quite a bit with the 20 Necron Warriors. It's pretty good there. And you're also going to catch a lot of people off guard with how much damage you actually still do. A lot of people be like, oh, there's only 1 Rogal Dorn. And then you're like, well, I also have the Katie Castle brick. I also have this Scion brick with Nork Deadog. And the Scion reroll wounds also works in melee. So the Nork Deadog, suddenly your 6 attacks at 812 dev wounds, suddenly you're rerolling for those dev wounds. So it can do a lot more damage than some people might expect. Other than that, you do have a lot of metapacks in this, so you do end up getting a lot of models back over the course of the game, which is very, very cool. Alex got big wins into Emperor's Children and Genestealer cults. lost or got a small win into Orcs, lost 0-20 to Nassim Fouchain on G0 Cults, and then a decent sized win into Deathwatch to finish it out, going for 4-1. So, welcome to the video, Alex, and I don't know if we'll see you on guard again, but it was nice to see you this time. So, we'll see you again at some point. Okay, next we're going on to some of the more standard things that we've been seeing quite a bit of. The first one is 2 Dorns and 2 or more Vanquishers. This generally plays, so big thing here, you're going to start with 2 Dorns, you're going to start with 3 Vanquishers, and then you're going to decide, do you want to put things in transports, or do you want to put horses, or like some Krieg Engineers, or Scout Sentinels? The biggest thing here is going to use whatever you choose in order to go out and force your opponent to play the game with you. Horses don't generally do a lot of damage on their own, but they are very cheap, and they are very fast, moving either 10 or 12 inches, and then you could, of course, give them move, 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 so you can screen out a lot of the board very effectively. However, if you choose to go with the Khazarkin and Chimeras, or Khazarkin and Tauroxes, they will actually go hunt things down a little bit better than the horses will in general. But either way, the major point is you're going to be using these tools in order to force your opponent to come into line of sight where you can kill them with all of your Rogel Thorns and all of your Vanquishers. The first one that we have right here, we do have Kyle McCord, who has not been a guard player for a while. The last time I saw him was like, I want to say like a year or two ago. But it has been a while. But Kyle McCord mostly plays things like Dark Angels or other Marines. But he has been known to play guard, especially for teams events. He went 4-0 at this event, where he's playing a Canadian Command Squad, Gonskos, 2 Silent Command Squads, 2 Rogel Commanders, 1 unit of 10 Cadians, 2 units of 10 Catachan, 2 Chimeras, 2 units of 5 Rough Riders, 2 units of 5 Scions, 3 Vanquishers, and a Scout Sentinel. Pretty standard stuff overall. If you are looking to play this style of list, I think this one makes a lot of sense. Chimeras and Catachan are one way to do it. I would have looked for opportunities to like. I feel like it's kind of like in the middle between the going with Khazarkin and Chimeras versus going for horses. And I think it's going to be easier for a lot of players if you just pick one or the other. But Kyle McCord is not your average player, of course. He gets a decent win to Custodes, small win to Sisters, and then decent sized wins into Space Wolves and Death Guard at Circuit Overload. Okay, next for our largest, what do you call it? Our largest category of the week, we do have 2 Dorns and 12 or more bullgryn. These fairly similar. You're going to be running the 2 Dorns, you're going to be running 12 bullgryn, and then these tend to have more Khazarkin in them, but you can also play them with the horses, where again, you're going to be going out, you need to have that first wave of stuff. That's oftentimes going to be the Khazarkin. You're going to go force your opponent to come play with you, and then you're going to charge whatever charged into like your Khazarkin or your horses with bullgryn. Bullgryn are almost always going to be that second wave. You can stand them on your objective on turn 1, and then after that, they're going to start. You're going to want to start charging things with them as soon as you realistically can. Okay, our first one, we have Taylor John Morton getting second place at Bolters and Broken Hearts, where he went 4-1, losing the final round to the winner of the event. He had a Commissar with Ad Beam and Detail, Gonskos, a Krieg Command Squad, 2 Rogel Dorn Commanders, Sly Marbo, 2 Engine Seers, 1 unit of 10 Krieg, 2 Chimeras, 2 units of 5 Rough Riders, 1 unit of 5 Rough Riders, 2 units of 6 Bullgryn, 2 Khazarkin, 1 unit of 5 Ratlings, and a Scout Sentinel. As always, Taylor is a player that has been not quite as active recently. I know he was doing some, I believe he moved not that long ago. But either way, biggest thing here is this is a pretty standard list overall. I am, in general, in favor of the Cadian Command Squad rather than the Krieg Command Squad, especially since most events have ruled that the Servo Scribes on the Krieg Command Squad does not work in conjunction with Snap to it. But the other big thing here is the 2 Engine Series I always think are really interesting. In my opinion, you really need to have a local meta that really values it. Something like a lot of like Railgun Tau in your local meta, or like maybe a lot of big knights that just have like really, really big guns. Like if you're playing up against like a Storm Surge or something, where there's just like a ton of AP ignoring cover, suddenly the Engine Series can become a little bit better. But in general, I generally would not recommend you take them to just like a meta that you don't know, or a meta that doesn't have like very specific things that the Engine Series is calling for. Other than that, though, this looks like a pretty normal Dorns and Bullgryn's list. Taylor beat CSM, Custodes, Grey Knights, and Terranians before losing in the finals to Drukhari. Next, we're going to be going over to New Zealand, where we had the Manawatu Team Strom, where Matthew Searle and his team ended up getting first overall, and Matthew went 4 wins, no losses, and 1 draw. He had a Canadian command squad, a commissar with Adpuma Detail, Song command squad, one Rogal Dorn commander, 10 Cadians, 10 Catachan, 10 Krieg, 1 Chimera, 1 Taurox, 10 Rough Riders, 2 units of 6 bullgryn, 3 units of Kazakhin, 1 unit of 5 Scions, and a Rogaldorn battle tank. So going for the Rogaldorn battle tank here does mean that the Dorn and or the two Dorns have to stay like reasonably close together in order to make sure that you get all the firepower out of both of them that you possibly can. And then this one is skewing towards having more Kazarkin and more just dudes to go play around the board. And you do have the 2 units of 6 Bullgrin. They had a pretty dominant event overall, where they did end up getting first. But Matt ended up getting a draw into Chaos Knights, which is a little bit surprising. That tends to be one of our better matchups. A 20 into Ultramarines, 15, 15, 16 into World Leaders, Imperial Knights, and Drukhari. So still doing very good overall across the rest of the event. So it's been a while since I've seen Matthew show up in one of our events, and hopefully it means you're getting a little bit more active. I know he's been trying to get onto Team New Zealand, or at least one of the state teams for the Anzac events that are going to be going on in the near future, so good luck for that. Moving over to Greece, we have the Acropolis Open, where Kevin Zollinger also went 4 wins and 1 loss at this one. A lot of interesting lists overall at this event, but Kevin coming in, not a name I've been seeing a lot of guard from recently. I don't remember what he was playing before this, but definitely something where it looks like they're coming over to this for the event in particular. Kevin was running a Cadian command squad, commissar with IPM detail, 2 Rogaldorn commanders, 1 engine seer, Cadians, 2 units of 10 Catachan, 2 Chimeras, 1 Taurox, 1 unit of 5 Rough Riders, 2 units of 6 Bullgrim, 3 units of Kazakhin, and 1 unit of Ratlings. This is really close to what I would call the platonic ideal of playing like the 2 Dorns, 12 Bullgrin, or at least one of them where you go towards the Kazakhin route instead of the horses route. The one thing that I would consider doing, of course, is I'm not overly fond of the engine seer in general, unless you have like specific things you're trying to target with it, like if you're going to be playing this on open boards up against Tau or something like that. And if you there's a couple of different ways to change the engine seer and maybe the Ratlings into something else. However, the engine seer is not a bad way to spend 45 points if that's what you end up having at the end of the rest of your list building. Kevin ends up getting a 20 into Death Guard, 15 into Ultramarines, a 5 into Iron Hands, playing Gladius. I didn't look too heavily at that list, but you don't see a ton of Iron Hands in general. 16-4 into White Scars, and a 17-3 into Drukhari. So well done to Kevin, and well done at the Acropolis Open. Going back over towards the United States, we have another event of the Circuit Overload, or another player, the same one that Kyle McCord was at. We have Austin Howald going 3-1. He had a Canadian command squad, commissar with IPM detail, Song command squad, 2 Royal Dorn commanders, 1 unit of 10 Cadians, 1 unit of 10 Krieg, 2 Chimeras, 2 units of 5 Rough Riders, 2 units of 6 Bullgrin, 2 units of Kazarkin, 1 10-man Scions, and 1 5-man Scions. There's a couple idiosyncrasies about this list that I feel are a little bit odd. One of them, I did double check, there was only 1 Scion command squad. I'm not a fan of 5-man Scions not being led right now. They're just kind of expensive for what we're trying to do. By the time you're taking a 5-man Scions, there's usually a way to fit a Gaunt's Ghost into the list, because the 5-man Scions don't really do any damage by themselves. They really, really rely on having the Scion command squad to buff up their damage to something relevant. And then the Gaunt's Ghost are just way more flexible than the Scions in general. Overall, though, it does make a decent amount of sense with the rest of what you have going on in the list. I probably would have looked to have downgraded the 10-man Scions to a 5-man Scions, and then spend those, or rather, like, drop, I don't know, probably like 10 Scions here, and then find a way to put, like, Gaunt's Ghost and something else into the list, just kind of in general, in order to beef up that part of the play. Like I said, not overly fond of the 5 Scions. However, the 10 Scions plus a Scion command squad will do serious damage into anything kind of in the game. Austin ended up getting a 20 into GSC, a 13-7 into Necrons, an 18-2 into Thousand Suns, and a 1-19 into Tau. Okay, I don't remember how many lists we have in this next section, but the Dorns, Bulls, and Vanks, oh my. You have a little bit of everything. You have all of the really beefy stuff. This is generally more of a stat check list in terms of, can you kill all of my very durable units in the army? A lot of times the answer is no. You generally, the biggest thing about these kind of lists that makes me a little bit wary of them is you have very little that can actually play the mid board, because you just run out of stuff, right? You just run out of points to spend on the rest of the army. And so you generally have to decide very early on, do you want your bullgryn going first? Do you want your vanquishers going first? And it's going to depend on what your opponent's list is. So I generally, when I look at these, I don't recommend them for newer players. These are a little bit more difficult to play, but they will just win some games on the fact that they are a stat check that not every army can deal with. The first one we have is Thomas Greer over at Clutch City, the same one they had that Robert Moreland was playing at. He had a Keating Command Squad, Commissar with IPM Detail, Guns Ghost, Silent Command Squad, 2 Regal Dorn Commanders, a 10-man Cadian, 1 Torox, 1 unit of 5 Rough Riders, 1 unit Kazarkin, Krieg Flamers, 1 unit of 5 Signs, and then 2 Lemur's Vanquishers. So as you can kind of see, the mid-board play, or like that first wave, you have the Torox, you have the Kazarkin, and then you have 5 Rough Riders. And that's kind of it. That's not a lot of pieces that can play, and so you have to commit your second wave relatively early on, which generally includes like those 2 to 6 Bullgryn and the Lemur's Vanquisher. So you generally have to play this one a little bit more of a in your face, can you deal with me? And riding that lightning can be a little bit more difficult. But Thomas ended up getting a win to War Leaders, Chaos Knights, Death Guard, Sisters before losing to Necrons in the 5th round. Going back over to Spain, we have the 11th GT Dave Valencia, Pepe Andrew, going 4 wins and 1 draw. I forgot to update his ELO, I think. Yeah, because this was a teams event. Same one that I think we had Roger and Luis at from before. But it was a Keating Command Squad, Commissar with IPM Detail, 2 units of Silent Command Squads, 1 Rogal Dorn Commander, 10 Cadians, 1 Chimera, 10 Rough Riders, 2 units of 6 Bullgryn, Catachan Mortars, 1 unit of 5 Death Riders, 1 unit of Kazarkin, 2 units of 5 Silence, a Lemur's Vanquisher, and 1 Rogal Dorn Battle Tank. So as always, when you only have the 1 Rogal Dorn Commander, you're going to be running into some issues that is a little bit more difficult to play using the relatively short range of the 1 Rogal Dorn Commander in order to get all of your orders going out. And then the same thing here, you're relatively small on the number of things that can just go run out into the middle of the board, or things that you want to have run out into the middle of the board on turn 1. It's basically the Chimera with the Kazarkin, and then the Death Riders. So you generally, that's generally like my, that's one of the things that I often run into with looking at these kinds of lists, is they don't generally get to dictate engagements as well as others similar lists that don't have both the Bullgryn and the Vanquisher. You generally have to use more expensive pieces faster, which to me always makes it a little bit more difficult for a lot of people to play. However, it is something that if you do have the ability to play, if you're already going to be doing well at your GTs, it is something that you can try and emulate. Pepe ended up getting a small win into Custodes, Thousand Suns, a draw into Ultramarines, a bigger win into Demons, and another smaller win into AdMech. So going 4 wins and 1 draw overall. I have nothing in this category, so we're going to skip it. Next, we have the funny tank piles. So these are a couple of lists that just have a lot of big tanks. Lots of tanks, mini tanks, and they rely very heavily on having some number of cheap things that you're going to throw out into the middle, and then you're going to shoot them. And you're going to shoot everything on the other side really, really hard. You have a lot of toughness 10 or higher, and then 2+ saves, which is ridiculous for a lot of armies to try and deal with. The first one that we do have here is Robert Moreland, actually the only one we have, getting 2nd place at Clutch City GT, going 6 wins and no losses. Robert had a Cadian Command Squad, 2 Rogal Dorn Commanders, Ursula Creed, 10 Cadians, 3 units of 5 Rough Riders, 1 unit of 5 Death Riders, 2 units of 5 Krieg Engineers, 1 unit of 5 Rattlings, a Cyclops, and then 2 Lemur's Vanquishers and 2 Rogal Dorn Battle Tanks. It's a lot of tanks. It's a lot of shooting. It's a lot of barrels that your opponent does have to deal with. And then he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things that are going to be running around in the board relatively early on. They don't do a ton of damage, but they will be able to, like, your 5-man Death Riders can plausibly kill 5 Scout Marines. And then they'll kill like a couple of Marines and other like engagements, but they don't really do that much damage into most targets. But you do have a lot of them. That is 7 units that are just going to be running around in the midboard that your opponent does have to deal with. They will almost always be trading down when we shoot at whatever killed these with our Dorns immediately after. With the Dorns immediately afterwards. Robert did end up going 6 wins and 0 losses, losing out on tiebreakers. Getting 2nd overall. He beat Imperial Knights, Custodes, Chaos Knights, Blood Angels, Chaos Knights again, and then Ultramarines. If you are interested, the Blood Angels game was available on Wargames Live, where he was playing Purge the Foe against Blood Angels. I did make a small comment about the game that I saw in in my Discord. So again, if you're interested in that, hit me up on Discord, hit me up on Reddit. Don't ask me about it in the comments. I will not respond. Okay, then we have a couple of other lists that I do want to show you guys because I did do well. We'll talk about them as we get there. First one, we have Chris Redfern getting third place at GWC Warfare GT #1. And I'm not going to lie, I don't like this list very much. I don't think it makes a ton of sense in general, and we'll go ahead and talk about it in just a moment. It's got 2 catch and command squads. So they do have the scout. They do give. I don't know if you need to be leading, but they do have access to assault for some of their guns. You do have the Krieg command squad, a Luminous commander with the executioner main gun. Lord Solar, 3 units of 10 Death Corps of Krieg, 4 chimeras. So I'm assuming that you're putting 2 Catachan command squads in 2 of them, and then 2 10-man Kriegs in the other 2. 2 artillery pieces with heavy mortars, 1 unit, 5 Death Riders, a Demolisher, an Executioner, and then 2 Vanquishers. So you do have the 5 Russes in this, and you do have like a decent number of kind of obnoxious to remove pieces in the list between the 2 units of 10 Krieg and the Chimeras. The biggest problem with this is the damage profiles that you're putting out are a little bit wonky, and it's also really, really hard to use a lot of these pieces effectively because, well, yes, when you hop out of the Chimera, you do have the med pack. There are a lot of different ways for a lot of fairly normal looking armies to pop the Chimera and then kill what's inside. And then as you lose these pieces, you're very quickly going to be running into spots where you have to be doing things with your Lehman Russes. And then the artillery, there's just a lot of games where, kind of like I mentioned in the Spanish special, there's a lot of games where the artillery just doesn't do anything. Where you just don't have the targets for it. Like if you're going to be playing up against like a lot of Gladius builds will not have like a ton of great targets for your artillery. You're not going to have a ton of great targets for it into like any kind of knights build. They just don't do all that much. So it ends up being in like a really weird spot. This list does function, but I wouldn't really recommend going for this one either. For people who are trying to find more success, if this is what you have access to, go ahead and play it. The other big thing to note here is that it was a bit of a submarine for this, so losing round 1 into Grey Knights does mean that you have easier opponents, where he ended up beating World Leaders, Blood Angels, Imperial Fists, and then he beat the 1 Agents player in the world. So very exciting to see Agents pop up, not something you see every day. So either way, well done to Chris. Excited to see you pop up in the video, and I'm sure we'll see you again soon. Moving over to the American Southeast, we have ATC Florida. We have Tucker Ricky making another appearance. Fairly recent addition to the Art of War team. Also plays with the Florida Alliance. And last time he showed up, we were showing you Recon, but in Grizzled. And this time we are showing you Recon. He's got 2 Kading Castellans, 3 Kading Command Squads, a Commissar with Survival Gear. I believe that's the Scout enhancement, so you can attach it to the 20 Catachan if he wants to. Guns Ghost, 2 Ugrin Bodyguards, Slime Marbo, Ursula Creed, 3 units of 20 Cadians, 1 unit of 20 Catachan, 5 units of 10 Death Corps of Krieg, 2 units of 10 Rough Riders, 3 units of 5 Krieg Engineers, 1 unit of 5 Ratlings, and a Scout Sentinel. This is very, very similar overall to the list that we saw Wesley St. Hines, aka Nemo the Fish, take to Pirate Cup with Team USA. I believe the biggest change here is that Slime Marbo was added to the list. I'm not sure what it was, like what it came in place of, or maybe Nemo did take Slime Marbo. I don't remember. Either way, I'm not gonna lie. I think this is the same thing that we saw Tucker Ricky play last time with the Recon but Grizzle, but this time I honestly think it's stronger because it's Recon. Big thing here is, of course, you have very good tools to deal with shooting because you have a very strong attachment roll against shooting, and then the reverse of that, you have a very strong stratagem package going up against melee. So overall, he gets 4 very big wins into Eldar, Necron, Drukhari, and Eldar, and a small loss into CSM. I'm guessing this is going to be the Huron's Warband, Renegade Warband, whichever one has the advanced fallback shoot and charge. One where I know even Nemo, if you listen to him talk about it or listen to John Lennon on Contact Lost, they weren't sure if this was going to be a good matchup for Recon or not. At least in this one example, getting an 8-12 in a matchup that you might not know as well is still pretty darn good. So good job to Tucker Ricky. I know he was playing a lot of GSC beforehand, but now he's been playing a lot of guard hordes, and it's been going quite well for him. Next, at the same event, we have Alec Huffman going 3 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw. With Catachan Command Squad, Commissar with Appium and Detail, Gaunt's Ghost, 2 Rogel Dorn Commanders, Sly Marbo, 2 units of 20 Catachan, 2 Toraxes, 2 units of 5 Rough Riders, 6 bullgryn, 1 Field Ordnance Battery, 2 Kezrikan, and 6 Ogryn. I'm not gonna lie, I don't love this list either. The big thing here is that it feels like a weird way to try and stat check people with the 2 units of 20 Catachan, but it's also a really weird way to go about it. So the first one is you have the Commissar with Abhuman Detail, who maybe wants to join the Catachan with the 20 Catachan with the Catachan Command Squad for the extra order range. However, then the Catachan brick doesn't have access to Scout, which is one of the major reasons why you take a Catachan brick in the first place. So it ends up being like a weird, do you want to attach this or not? You also don't have that many ways to order like the 6 Ogryn other than having the Commissar nearby, which does make you want to attach the Commissar to the Catachan. And then you also have to be a little bit cognizant of there's a lot of things that are kind of asking for orders in this army. You have the 2 units of 5 Rough Riders, which really like orders. You have the 2 units of Catachan, which are generally going to really want orders relatively early on in the play. Like you generally want to have a lot of orders there, and then you have the Field Ordnance Battery, which doesn't really function without orders. So it feels like the orders are kind of all over the place, and you really rely on kind of going first to make sure that the Catachan are going to be effective. Otherwise, it's it's not the easiest thing in the world to get through a 20 brick of anything, but you also don't have the extra tools that often come with having the Cadian Command Squad giving you cover, or the 20 Death Corps of Krieg, who get stronger as they take casualties and also get the medic built in. So it feels like a very, it's going to function, but it feels odd. It doesn't really feel like it's going to have a holistic plan in the way that a lot of the other lists that I look at generally do. Oh, the other thing I wanted to point out about this list that Chris was playing, and I noticed it in my notes too late, the World Leader was playing the Cult of Blood, which was the Corn Lord Skull detachment, and that's cool. I don't think I've seen that in the wild ever, so very exciting. But going here back to Alec, he ended up getting a draw into Admech, a small win into Guard, a small win into Tyranids, a small win into Sisters, and a small loss into Deathwatch. So regardless of what I think about the list, it did do decently well overall. So congratulations to Alec. Thanks for making it into the video. I'll see you guys again next time. Overall, not a whole lot of super new stuff to show you guys this time, just lots of the same stuff. There are a lot of rumors of upcoming data slates, what it'll do, whether or not it'll hit Necrons, whether or not the tower are going to be absolutely nuts. But make sure you tune in every week to see what we are doing about stuff in general. I've got a couple of events. It's a very busy March coming up for me. I have a GT the first weekend, then I have a Teams event the second weekend, then I have a break, and then the last weekend I have another GT coming up. So there's going to be a lot of events there, and we'll see what happens. I will try and put out a video as soon as I can after the patch, whenever it does happen. If you're interested in getting more coaching, if you're interested in talking to me more and all that kind of stuff, make sure you hit up the Discord. Message me on Discord, message me on Reddit, ask me there, or you can always become a member of the YouTube channel, where you will be able to get access to that by connecting your Discord and YouTube accounts. For now, though, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys all next time. Bye-bye.